Rain pounded the empty sidewalk as Emily's soaked shoes slid on the slick pavement. Each step she took felt like wading through molasses. Her muscles screamed, her breath rasped in her chest, and the baby in her arms shivered against the thin, threadbare cloth she'd wrapped him in. The flickering street lamp overhead cast erratic shadows that danced around her, mocking her desperation. Behind her, the old German shepherd's heavy fur glistened with raindrops. Once a decorated 9 officer, now Emily's sole protector in a world that had turned its back on her. She sank to her knees, every bit of strength draining away. Would this be the night she failed her child? Tears slid down Emily's cheeks, indistinguishable from the rain, as she pressed her forehead against Shadow's drenched coat. "I can't do this anymore," she whispered through chattering teeth. The wind howled approval, urging her to give in, but Shadow's eyes met hers, calm, resolute, as if he understood the vow he'd just taken. Protect this tiny life no matter the cost. Gently, Emily loosened her grip, placed the baby tenderly on the cold pavement, and wrapped the bundle tighter. "Stay," she sobbed, "keep him safe." With one last lingering stroke of his wet muzzle, she turned away and let the storm swallow her whole. Beneath the flicker of failing streetlights, Shadow lowered himself into a brace around the infant. His ribs rose and fell in steady cadence, though every muscle trembled with cold. Rain sluiced past them in furious sheets, carving rivulets along the curb like miniature rivers of despair. Yet the dog did not waver. His memory of patrols past, of following commands, of saving strangers, faded into this new and sacred mission. Through the bone-chilling hours, he stood sentinel, ears perked for Emily's return, heart anchored by a promise he would never break. Dawn crept over the horizon, paling the sky with muted greys as puddles shimmered like dull mirrors. Officer James Miller steered his patrol car along the quiet road, tires hissing through shallow pools. His shift was almost done when a peculiar sight snagged his attention. A massive German shepherd curled protectively around what looked like a lump of cloth. Slamming on the brakes, he jumped out, rainwater dripping from his cap. The dog leveled him with unflinching eyes, then nudged the bundle at its paws. Kneeling, James unwound the sodden fabric, and his breath stuttered at the sight of a tiny, lifeless face. With no hesitation, James shrugged off his jacket and swaddled the infant in its warmth. "Oh boy, Shadow," he murmured, scratching the dog's damp ears. The puppy dog eyes softened for a heartbeat before stiffening into vigilant focus. In one smooth motion, James scooped the baby into his arms and motioned, "Let's." The dog rose and fell in step behind him, a silent guardian loyal to the end. The emergency room doors burst open as James rushed inside, the baby cradled against his chest like precious cargo. Nurses snapped into action at his urgent cry. "He's freezing, barely breathing." Within seconds, the infant was lying on a warmer, wires snaked across his tiny body, and warm blankets cocooned him. Surgeons and doctors converged, voices low and urgent. Meanwhile, Shadow sat rigid outside the glass doors, paws splayed, eyes locked on the cradle that held his charge. James knelt beside him, whispering through the glass, "They're helping him. You did great." Minutes slogged by like hours until one nurse exhaled in relief, her vitals stabilizing. James sank against the wall, soaking wet and every bit as chilled as the child he'd saved. His gaze never wavered from the baby's chest, rising and falling with steady steadiness. Shadow's tail thumped softly on the tile floor, the swell of pride in his chest stronger than any storm. Over the next days, James and Shadow became fixtures at the hospital. Each shift, James drifted back to that quiet corridor to watch Shadow slip inside the nursery, chin resting on the crib rail, eyes guarding the infant like a knight at his post. In those hushed hours, James thought of laughter that once filled his own home, his late wife's gentle hum, his daughter's bright giggles, and felt a stirring in his chest. Could broken hearts mend around a new life flickering in the night? Then came the woman with the trembling hands and polite smile, insisting, "I'm his mother." Her eyes darted like frightened birds as nurses led her down the hallway. Shadow, lying as always by the door, snapped to attention, hackles raised and a low growl rumbling in his throat. The woman froze, her carefully composed mask cracked. James felt that familiar rush of instinct. This was no mother's embrace. A DNA test confirmed his hunch. She was an opportunist, drawn by headlines of the Storm baby. Shadow had not only guarded the boy's life, but the truth itself. Late one evening, after rounds had ended, the hospital doors slid open to reveal a frail figure in soaked clothes. Emily's hollow eyes found James as she whispered, "Am I, baby?" and collapsed. Time slowed as he caught her, lifting her like glass into his arms. Her story spilled between shallow breaths, the hunger, the fear, the impossible choice. Tears mingled with her words. "I never wanted to leave him. I just didn't know how to save him." James sat beside her on the stretcher, offering silence and a steady presence in place of answers. In the days that followed, Emily grew stronger. She spent every moment by her son's incubator, brushing a stray lock of hair from his forehead. Shadow remained beside her, content to share his warmth. James visited more often than duty required, drawn by something beyond obligation, a fragile hope blossoming in Emily's grateful smile. Between the clink of medical trays and the soft beep of monitors, a gentle understanding formed. Two people scarred by storms, finding refuge in each other. Finally, doctors pronounced both mother and child ready for discharge. In the soft morning light, Emily stood hesitantly at the hospital entrance. James held out his hand, his smile steady, a "let's go home." With Shadow at their side, they stepped into the sun-dappled world together. The first steps of a new family. At their cozy house, sunlight warmed the little living room as Emily rocked baby Ethan and James's daughter chased Shadow's wagging tail. Laughter bubbled like a spring from cracked hearts. James paused in the doorway, drinking in the scene, the warmth in Emily's eyes, the innocent joy of a child, the faithful dog at their feet. No words were needed. They all felt the unspoken truth. Family isn't only who you're born to, it's who you choose, who stands by you through the storm. And so, beneath the gentle watch of a German shepherd, whose promise had changed every life, they built a home stitched together by love, loyalty, and the unbreakable bond they forged on one rain-soaked night. Warmth settled over the small house like sunlight through stained glass windows, casting dancing patterns across the floorboards. Each morning, Emily stirred awake first, the soft coo of baby Ethan guiding her to the nursery. She'd pause at the door, breathing in the hush before the world awakened, and there, Shadow lay curled like a living quilt at the foot of the crib, vigilant even in sleep. James would join her soon after, coffee in hand, their shoulders brushing as they shared a quiet smile that spoke of newfound hope. At the breakfast table, the clink of spoons on porcelain mingled with Ethan's gurgles and the patter of Shadow's soft paws. The toddler's first stumbling step toward the dog unleashed delighted laughter. Emily's warm and clear, James's deep and comforting. Shadow lifted his head, ears tilting forward, as if granting the child his own silent blessing. In that moment, boundaries blurred. Child and dog, mother and father, once broken families weaving together into a tapestry richer than any they had known. Outside, the garden bloomed in careless profusion, wildflowers nodding in the breeze, the air humming with promise. James and Emily stood side by side, fingers intertwined, watching Ethan chase butterflies under Shadow's watchful gaze. A new chapter unfurled before them, where every sunrise brought the promise of healing and every dusk cradled the reassurance of love. Yet even as peace settled like gentle snow, they knew life's storms could return. Still, with Shadow at their side and each other's hands to hold, they were ready for whatever came next.